Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's tutorial is all about how I made this terrazzo style cake out of butter ganache. I have done a terrazzo style cake before, but I did it with I did it with buttercream before. This time we're going to do butter ganache. And I'm also going to show you how to make those wire flowers. So what I did the day before was I went ahead and I mixed my colors. And this was the color palette. And I put them onto an acetate sheet and let them dry and just firm up overnight so that I could use them the next day. And what I did once they are ready to go is I just chopped them up into irregular shapes. There was no rhyme or reason to this. I just wanted to make sure I didn't make them too small. I wanted them to be seen. And I did try to take out the very small pieces because those, I don't know, I wanted them to be more of the medium-sized pieces. And I cut all of the colors up. I'm trying to remember the colors that I used. I think it was eucalyptus, rust. I'm looking at the different colors as they lay here. And then there was a latte. And then, was it lilac? I believe it was lilac, and then gray. And I used all Color Mill colors for this because we're working with chocolate. You wouldn't want to use a gel-based color with the chocolate ganache because it might seize up on you. Probably would seize up on you. Okay, most definitely it would seize up on you. So you need to use the oil-based colors, and I personally really like the Color Mill. And this is how I made my wrap because I did this in a wrap method. I just cut a piece of acetate to the size and that I needed to wrap around the cake. I just measured it ahead of time, the circumference and the height. And I just have two, they're 1/4-inch thick pieces of wood. And these have been sanitized. I've cleaned them and yes, made sure that they're fine to work with. And taped them down to the table. And then I had placed the chocolate in the freezer to firm up before I did this because it will heat up with the room temperature and the heat from your hands. So I just made sure they're nice and chilled. I put some shortening on top of this acetate sheet, and I'm just laying them so that they're all flat. Because those were, when I showed you the pieces beforehand, I had used these pieces of wood to make those also. So they're the same thickness. And then I have what did I use? It's all butter ganache, but the color. I think I used gray again. Yeah, this is Color Mill's gray. What is it called? I'll put everything in the video description. Sometimes I need to sit and think about what I used instead of just rattling it off. So yes, I just poured it on there and then leveled it out, and I'm removing the excess from around it. And this firms up firm enough to use fairly quickly. I would say within 15 minutes. And then my cakes were already ready to go and nice and chilled. And then I just pick it up and I just wrap it around. Make sure that it is sticking to, and I did put butter ganache on. No, I'm lying. That is just buttercream on the cake itself. And it stuck to the buttercream just fine. Now, you might have some cracks, but that's okay. We'll deal with that later. And now I'm doing the same thing for the top tier. I believe this was a 5-inch. No, it was a 6. Let me think. A 7-inch and a 5-inch, I believe is what these cakes were. And I'm just using my pastry brush to brush on that shortening. And then do the same thing, just arrange them. Just kind of do it organically because this is a natural type of a look. So organic is the best way to go. And this one, I wanted it to be kind of gradiated up on the top tier to just the gray. Just to give it kind of a different look. And like I said, before when I did this, it was a little while ago that I did another terrazzo style cake. But on that one, I used buttercream. So I'll try to remember to add, a link in the video description or on an iCard up here, a link to that video also if you want to see how I did that. Then I did put some of the ganache on the top. We need to fill that in and just remove the excess. And each of these cakes I put in the freezer to firm up after I had put the wrap on. And now we're just going to gently remove the wrap. It's on there pretty good. So, I mean, just be gentle enough that you're not going to pull it off, but don't worry too much about that. And yes, I know I need to put ganache on the top of this one, but I do get to it. But there were some cracks. So how we're going to handle that is just pipe some more of the butter ganache on it. Make sure you push it into those cracks with your spatula and just scrape off the extra. It's really, yeah, it works really smooth. And when this is not sped up, this does take a little time. So just take your time with it. It works out just fine. You just got to be patient. And I like using a metal scraper when I am doing a scraping technique because the plastic ones are just not quite, I don't know what the word is. The metal is just firmer and it's thinner and it scrapes excess off a little easier, I feel, than a plastic one does. And now we're going to do exactly the same thing for the top tier. And I did need to go back in and cover up some of those cracks again. I guess the only way to prevent that, and can you see that shine? I kind of wish it had had that shine because when you have to scrape it, you're scraping off the shine. But, you know, what you could do maybe is add a thin layer of shortening over the top of it maybe, just to give it a little bit more shine if that really bothers you. And I suppose when it comes to preventing the cracks, I suppose the only thing you could do is just make sure that you're transferring the product onto the cake a little earlier. I didn't deliberately stall when I did this. It's just when you're working on 2 tiers, sometimes it takes a little longer to get to the second tier. Because, you know, it takes twice as long. Anyway, I think it still turned out great. But now I'm putting in some straws for my support, and all 3 of them are the same height to make sure your top tier is level. And then just a little bit of buttercream. You could use leftover melted ganache if you have it, or even melted chocolate. It works great for stacking your tiers. And I could just lift it on there because it was chilled, and I just move it around to where it's got a good level, at the very least, front side. And now I am filling in the gap in between and then just removing excess. My hands are clean, I promise. And then you can go back in with a scraper. Also, I like to use these small metal ones to scrape off the excess. And the small metal scrapers, I believe, are in the My Favorites list. All the products that I like the best are in my favorites list in the video description with links that will take you right to Amazon where you can purchase if you are wanting to use the same tools that I use. Now we're going to make our flour. And I did do these the day before I put the whole thing together also so that they could firm up. But these are just 22 gauge wire, I believe. Anyway, the wire gauge, as long as you can bend it, the gauge doesn't matter quite so much. So I'm just using some of that purple color that I used from Color Mill, and I added a little bit of Everclear. But I will say, and I just brushed it on so that they're all the same color. But I will say the Color Mill does not necessarily like to work with Everclear, but for my purposes on this, because it worked just fine. Because what happens is it clumps up a little bit. But it didn't affect what I was doing here. And then I bent the wires and made a little hook on the end, a little loop. And I'm just using some gum paste colored the same color. roll it into a little disc there, and then I use my creme brulee torch to heat up the tip of the wire where that loop is. This is how I get my wires to stick almost immediately into gum paste, is heat them with the your torch there. It might catch on fire. Don't worry about it because it's covered in not fabric, but what you call it? They're not just the shiny wire. They've got a coating on them. Just blow it out if it happens. And then it kind of sears right to your gum paste. Then I have some dragées that I put a little bit of the color. I don't know why I don't have the footage for that. But in a baggie, I put some of the extra color that I used to paint the stems. And I put white dragées inside of that baggie and just shook them up and dumped them out onto the towel. So they're the same color also. And that was just water that I brushed on the top, and I just stuck them right into the dragées. If they want to pop off, you could always use a little gum paste, not gum paste, but what do you call it? Piping gel. Might make them stick a little easier. And this is how I'm shaping them. I did this in another video recently when I did the isomalt petals. Same thing, just shape it around your petal cutters, whatever shape you want to do. And I did do one that was not a full flower. This is kind of like when you're like a dandelion, when all of the pretty parts blow away and you're left with kind of just, the base of it. It's like it's an overly, what's the word I'm looking for? Past its prime. But I think it looks pretty too. I think it's neat for a different texture and design, so that not all of the three of the flowers are exactly the same. So two of them are, and the other one is that way. Now, I do wish that I had had more time to let the gum paste set up a little bit more. I would give it, because you can see that one petal right there is wanting to droop down. I did let them set overnight, but it would have been easier to work with if I had had more time to let that product set up. But I didn't. This was at the end of the day. And I put it in the flower former, and I bent the petals a little bit to give it a little bit more of a realistic look. And then I painted the stems. I did wrap some floral wire around those and painted them exactly the same. Now for placement, you can just bend your flower so it's facing forward. And since this is ganache, I'm using my scribe tool there to puncture a little hole and then stick them in there. And then I'm using another U-shaped wire to anchor the bottom one. Just make sure you tell your customers where there's inedible objects in their cake. And there's the end product. Guys, I really, really like this. I know I say this every time, but I love the terrazzo style. I just do. And I think the abstract flowers add an extra touch. So I hope you liked it and got something from it, and we'll catch you on the next one.